Welcome to JS's Flying, and if you're using OpenCore on your Mac hardware, in this guide I'm going to explain every little detail about the config plist that sets up the OpenCore, how you can spoof a different Mac hardware, how to get rid of the memory errors of a Mac Pro 7.1, and how to configure the config plist tailored to your hardware and your needs. Maybe you already know my tutorial how to install macOS on an unsupported Mac hardware, and it's all about the OpenCore bootloader that does that job. And the automatic installation process really does a good job, and it pre-configures everything, and you just choose your hardware and should be good to go. But when you dive a little bit deeper into the config and you want to maybe change something, you want to spoof a different hardware, you want to switch on or off the verbose mode where you get all the error messages and everything, you need some knowledge about the config plist. That is the file that configures OpenCore during the boot, and you can set up everything in this file. So in this tutorial, let's talk about some of the options where you can tweak and you can tailor the config plist to your hardware and your needs. And it all starts here on the Dortania's OpenCore install guide page, with a very good resource of questions and answers, and in every detail everything is explained. But if you click on Getting Started, you will see this is all about installing macOS on PC hardware that you call Hackintosh, right? But we have Mac hardware, and we want to tweak OpenCore and config plist to Mac hardware. So I give you all links you need down in the video description, and we need some tools to tweak in our config plist. And the first two tools, where you find the link down in the description, is the GitHub repository of Proper-Tree. That is a very neat graphic overview of the config plist. And the second tool you need is GenSM BIOS. That gives you a random number for your BIOS serial and your motherboard serial and all this stuff, but that compliant to the checks that the macOS does if this is a valid hardware. All right. So to download those tools, you just go to the green button where it says Code, and you click Download Zip. Okay. And if you've downloaded both, there's a third link down in the video description, and that is the OC Mac Pro package. And it's not just for Mac Pro users. I updated this package because there is something very important in it. When you downloaded all those zip files, it's very small zip files, and the Mac Pro package is about 55 megabytes. Just do a double click that it expands everything into a folder. And when you open the OC Mac Pro package folder, there are 3 folders in it. We are now going into this folder that's Dortania OpenCore for Legacy Macs. This was a tutorial website from Dortania that was online, I think, until mid-June. I don't know exactly, but was set offline now from Dortania. I don't know why, because it's really helpful. And just let me change the view and expand it a little bit more. So here you have all the details about Mac hardware with OpenCore. Booting without the USB, avoiding NVRAM overrides, fixing audio, Ethernet, and whatever. It's downloaded from Google Cache, so it doesn't look that nice and neat how it exactly looked before it went offline, but the info is still there. And for instance, as I have a Mac Pro, I can open here Mac Pro OpenCore for Legacy Macs, and I just open this website here. And you see here, we're now in the page Mac Pro with all those info. If you just scroll down a little bit, you see here we need Proper-Tree and GenSM BIOS. That's the two tools we just downloaded. And then you see a lot of info about Mac Pro. And to see this config plist and the contents of the config plist, we need the first of our tools, the property. Okay, we go to downloads and I go into the property master folder, and the property.bat file, that's a batch file. That's for Windows users as far as I know, but as we're on a Mac, we use the property.command, and you see the console is running in the background and you get the window untitled plist. That's the important part. And so that you can see it better on the video, I will just zoom in into that window a little bit because I cannot enlarge it here. Just give me a moment. Okay, first we're going to do is open that config plist file. We go File, Open, and then we go to the downloads, and we go into the OC Mac Pro package, EFI, OC, and we choose config 5.1 manually. That was the one we wanted to open, okay? If we open that up, you can see all the contents of the config plist file. And that is a lot of stuff. So just to make it easy, we click the little triangles here in front of ACPI, booter, and so on. So we can see the main headlines, okay? The main chapters. There's ACPI, booter, device properties, kernel, miscellaneous, NVRAM, platform info, and UEFI. These are the chapters we're gonna work with. And now you may see the similarity between these chapters in the config plist and the old guide from Dortania. As you see here, ACPI, booter, device properties, and so on. And this page here is for a Mac Pro, but there are pages for MacBook, MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, Mac Mini, iMac, and an Xserve server. So there you can really go into all the details, what each config line does and what you might tweak for your hardware. So let's just dive into the ACPI. Oh, and as you see, don't click on it, it's offline. So if you just scroll down, you find the point. Here's starting point, and then you see property and SM BIOS, you find the section ACPI. And it's quite easy, as it says, this section can be skipped. And what is this add, delete, patch, and quirks stuff? That's quite easy. When you go into ACPI, you see the subfolders add, delete, patch, and quirks. And there is nothing in it. As you can see here with add, there are 0 children. And with quirks, there's a little triangle. If you click that, you have 5 key or value pairs. That is FADT enable, reset, normalize headers, and all this stuff. But when you go back to the guide, it says quirks, settings related to ACPI, leave everything here as default, as we have no use for these quirks. And that's the same with all sections. If you have an open core that says, okay, this hardware is a Mac Pro 5.1 from 2012, there will no updates show up as it's unsupported, right? But if you say, okay, this hardware is a Mac Pro 7.1 from 2019, everything's supported, Monterey, and you get every update that Apple releases. And these settings are in the chapter platform info. I will just close all those subfolders here. And the first most important section here is automatic. But what does automatic mean? It's a little bit confusing. If you set it to true, and it's very easy because it's a Boolean, it can only be true or false. And if you just do a double click, you have a little menu where you can choose true or false. When you go into the subchapter generic, you see MLB, that's mainboard. You see a system product name, a system serial number, and a system UUID. And you see here at system product name, it says Mac Pro 5.1. That means if automatic is set to true, it automatically inserts these values during boot. If you set automatic to false, it just uses the info it gets from your BIOS, from the hardware, and it shows up as the real hardware you have. So if you want to spoof a different hardware, you need to set automatic to true, and you have to change those values down here. And how you can change that values, you need the second tool you downloaded, and that's the SM BIOS. So we go back to where we downloaded everything, and we go into the GenSM BIOS master folder. And I'll just make this a little bit smaller. And there's the same file. It's a batch file for the Windows version, as far as I know, and we need the GenSMBIOS.command. So we do a double click on it, and then GenSM BIOS opens up in the terminal. The function we need here is number 3, generate SM BIOS. And maybe if I just move this a little bit to the side, you see here, there's a serial number and the UUID. Okay, so we just choose option 3, and it's just downloading a little bit. And then you have to type in the BIOS where you get the serial number for and how many iterations it should do. So if we want to have a Mac Pro 7.1, then a space, and we say, okay, 5 iterations, and type enter, we have now 5 serial numbers and board serial numbers and UUIDs for a Mac Pro 7.1. It's obvious where to put this. I just make it a little bit smaller. Maybe we just go to the last generated number. And you see here, type Mac Pro 7.1. That would be your system product name. And the easiest thing is just to highlight everything, copy, and here with system product name, you do a double click, Command V, that is insert, and then hit enter. And then you have Mac Pro 7.1. You do the same with serial and system serial number here, double click, Command V for paste, and you see it pastes the system serial number. The next is the board serial, Command C, and this goes here to MLB. Double click, Command V, enter. And you have the UUID. You copy the whole stuff with Command C and enter it here in System UUID. Command V, enter. And you can find all these settings, obviously, as well in the tutorial from Dortania. And we have to scroll down until we find there's NVRAM. One more thing, we have to go to platform info. And there you see, for this Mac Pro example, they choose Mac Pro 7.1 SM BIOS. That's what we just did. And if you do not want to inject a new BIOS, so keep it with the BIOS settings it has. Disable update SM BIOS, update data hub, update NVRAM, and spoof vendor. And if you look here, you find all this stuff down here. There is update SM BIOS, that is down here. Update data hub, that's the same here. Update NVRAM, that's the one in between. So these 3 settings together with automatic and spoof vendor, you find this setting here below generic. That has to be true as well. And next time you boot with OpenCore, your system will show up as a Mac Pro 7.1 from 2019 and will receive every update that Apple releases. If you do not spoof a newer hardware, you have to insert this dash no compat check into boot arguments. I show you where you have to do that to avoid SM BIOS detection in macOS, so that like for instance, Big Sur doesn't check, okay, this is an old Mac Pro 5.1, it's not supported, I won't boot. So where to put this no compat check, okay, the boot arguments are hidden under NVRAM, and then there is a subchapter add, and then you find two chapters with very cryptic names. You don't need the first one, we can just make this small here, but under the second one, you find the key value boot args. And here you find, I will just enlarge this a little bit. Here you will find all boot arguments that this config plist is using. And as you see here, dash no compat check, it's already inserted. Your arguments may look different, okay? But this is the place, as I said in the intro, when you want to switch on the verbose mode to see all the error messages during boot, this is the place where you put it. Just make a double click and go to the end, make a space, -V, hit enter. And if you boot now with this config plist, it shows every error message, and it's very nice for debugging to see maybe if you have a boot loop or you have a freeze, what causes these problems, okay? -V switches the verbose mode on. Whenever you spoof a Mac Pro 7.1, and it doesn't matter if you have real Mac hardware, it just isn't a Mac Pro 7.1, or a PC hardware and you're doing a Hackintosh, you will run into error messages from the macOS that says memory misconfiguration. And there's a page here on Dortania's Open Core install guide how to fix that. And I'm just walk you through that procedure. It's not that complicated. We just scroll down here until you find post install. And if you click on that, it opens up a new page. And if you just scroll down here to the part cosmetics, and it's really just cosmetics, but it's annoying. There's one page, fixing Mac Pro 7.1 memory errors. And when you open the system configuration overview, you see under memory that it says, okay, you had like 32 gigabytes installed, but it's more than maximum supported memory. It just doesn't detect the memory modules correctly, okay? So how to fix that? If you just scroll down a little bit, you find with mapping our memory, the tool DMI Decode. We have to download this little tool, just click on it and we get to the GitHub repository, and you just scroll down here and download that zip file. When you downloaded that zip file, we can close this again, and I'm here in the downloads. Just make a double click on the zip file and you see there is the tool DMI Decode. I just leave it here under downloads and we can close that window also. When you just scroll down, there's a lot of commands you can do and find out about your memory with the DMI Decode tool. You can just work yourself through all this, but just let's try one command that you need. And when you open up the console, first I do is ls for list, and you see I'm in my home folder. So I just say cd downloads for change directory, do another ls, and then we're in the downloads folder, and you see here there is the DMI Decode tool. It's in the download. And just to use this, you just type /DMI Decode -T, and you will find all the other commands, just for instance down here, -T memory, and then you do a vertical slash grep, and now you type what part of the info you want to grab. Okay, so we now type size, and if you hit now enter, you see with my Mac Pro that I have 8 gigabytes installed in the first memory slot, 8 in the second, third and fourth are not installed, are empty, 5th and 6th also each has 8 gigabytes, and 7 and 8 also is empty. As I said, you can try all those commands that are described on the website. If you just push the arrow up, the last command comes up again. You can just change the part here in parentheses and maybe type detail as it said here on the website. It doesn't matter if you do the double point here, and you see type detail, there's none in the DMI. And then you can just go through all the commands and write down all the info you need, but at least the size info should say in which slots your memory is installed. With that info, we go into our, and I just enlarge it a little bit, into our config plist. And we are still in the platform info chapter where we worked before. And there's one more entry that says custom memory. And this is false, so it just tries to detect automatically which memory is installed. But now it's creating errors. So we will set this to true. And now all info in the memory chapter will be used. If it's false, it will just ignore it. But if you open up the memory part here, you see the info that you can find out with the tool. Data width, it's 64-bit, error correction, form factor, max capacity. This is configured for a Mac Pro 5.1 for the memory in there. If you have a different device, just go through all the commands, write down all the info you can get, work yourself through the homepage, and then you enter all the values here. And now there is one chapter, devices. If you open this up, there are 12 chapters from 0 to 11 that represents the 12 memory slots the Mac Pro 7.1 has. And now to get rid of the error, you have to have an entry in every of these slots. If you just expand slot 0, you see an asset tag. That's just a random number. I just entered 1, 2, 3 to 9. Bank locator, it's bank 0, and device locator is DIMM 0 because it's slot 0. Manufacturer, just write anything. If you have found out your manufacturer, you can just enter it. I just enter open core. Part number, it's just random number or any random name. I just entered open core 8 GB, serial number the same. The only important part is size and speed. Size here, as you have seen, I have an 8 GB module in my first slot. So I entered 8,196 megabytes, that's 8 gigabytes, as a module size. And the speed is 1,333 megahertz. Okay. I did the same with slot 1. I just called it Bank 1 and DIMM 1 and Open Core 0001, but that's up to you how you can enter it, or you enter the real serial numbers you find out with the tool. But then my third and fourth slot were empty. That is number 2 and number 3. And so you see I left everything the same, but I just entered size 1 and speed 1. The same with the fourth slot. Don't get confused, it's number 3 because we start with 0 here. The fifth slot is already an 8 GB module, same as the sixth slot, an 8 GB module, and all other slots here, size 1, speed 1. The same with this one, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So all 12 slots have info about a memory module. And don't forget, we have to have custom memory true. And next time you boot, the memory error should be gone. So after you have tweaked and configured and set up the config plist file, we have to get this into OpenCore, right? And just for those guys who don't know how to do that, it's also described in all my tutorials about the Open Core. We have to mount the EFI partition either of your hard drive, if you have Open Core already on your hard drive, or on the USB drive if you boot from the USB for testing purposes. Okay, so I will show you this with a USB drive, but it's the same procedure with a hard drive. First, you open up the terminal. The first command is disk-util list, and then it shows you all disks, hard disks, and partitions you have in your device. And that looks different depending on how many hard drives you have installed. And what you're looking for is EFI partition, okay? And we're looking now for an EFI partition on the USB drive, and that is an external physical drive. And when you look down here, it's disk 8, that is external physical. Don't use the synthesized ones. These are containers that Apple uses with the APFS file system. Then you have here, when I scroll up a little bit, internal physical. That is my 1.5 terabyte hard drive. I have another synthesized. Then I have another internal physical. That's the next real hard drive. That is a 1 terabyte drive. And I have an internal physical drive that is a 2 terabyte drive. These are my 3 data disks. And then I have an internal physical drive, 480 gigabytes. That is my macOS system drive. And when you see there is here an EFI partition that has 209.7 megabytes, that's always the same size. And if I wanted to copy the config plist now to Open Core on my system macOS drive, I have to use the identifier disk 0S1. So, but we want to do it on the USB drive. That's the external physical down here. And there's the EFI partition that is called disk 8S1. That's the identifier we need. And we have to mount to be able to access the EFI drive and to exchange the config plist file. And to do that, we need administrator rights, and that means sudo, that means superuser disk-util mount, and then we say disk 8S1. If I hit enter, it asks for my password, for my login password. So just enter your password, and then it says volume EFI on disk 8S1 is mounted. And when I now go into the Finder, you see Big Sur, that is my macOS system drive, the data drives with the 1, 1.5, and 2 terabyte, the install macOS Big Sur, that's the USB drive, and EFI. That is the EFI partition we just mounted. If I go inside here, there's the folder EFI, the folder OC for Open Core, and then we are here in this folder, and there are different kinds of config plist that I'm working and trying, and just rename every config plist that it's not called config.plist but something else, and the config plist you just tweaked, copy in here, rename it to config plist, and then you can boot from your USB drive to test the new settings. If everything is fine, just do the same again, but now mount the EFI partition of your system drive and copy the config plist in there, and then it will start every time with your fine-tuned config plist. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this guide helps you to fine-tune and configure Open Core how you want it to be and how you want it to use your Mac hardware. And I would really appreciate if you would subscribe my channel if you haven't yet, if you give me a like and a thumbs up for my video, and stay tuned, explore my channel. There's a lot of other things about flying, model flying, and Mac, computer, old graphic cards, and whatever. Have fun on my channel. See you soon. Bye bye.